from Greater Sandton and beyond. Get ready for the Sandton Times Hour
with your host,
Alexander.
Ladies and gentlemen, everyone in between and beyond, welcome to the Sandton Times Hour. It's edition 211. It's week 36 of 2025, and thank goodness it's September. I'm Alexander Leibner, and a very special welcome to everyone listening for the very first time. If it's on air or online, you're welcome. Join the Sandton Times Hour Nation every week in Johannesburg and Pretoria, across South Africa, and anywhere and everywhere else in the world. Wherever you are, I'm happy to report that all is well in Sandton land, especially as the temperatures start rising again and we start feeling like we can come out of our shells, we can come out of our houses and experience the world again after some slightly chilly months. I know we always complain. Nothing compared to what Europe goes through, but in our own little way, we do enjoy a bit of sunshine and a bit of warmth. Vincenzo is back behind the mixing desk, and what do you mean what happened last week, Vincenzo? What do you mean? You tell me what happened. You must have played the wrong tape cassette from the previous week on the broadcast. Anyway, listen, whatever happened, massive apologies to those who caught the broadcast last week and were a bit confused. But I do hope that the stars have aligned for a new month and you get the full broadcast without any detours this week. Speaking of detours, a quick look at the week's diary, which kicked off with a dinner at a new restaurant called The Salt Road in Houghton. And we're going to get the culinary brains behind this particular restaurant on the show, I think, in the coming weeks, because I thought it was really interesting to chat to them about their philosophy around food and specifically salt. Then I had a lunch at the Four Seasons, the West Cliff, which was absolutely gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. A new menu, a new team in the kitchen. Actually, not that new. One familiar face, Chef Rudy Liebenberg. For those of you who might remember, he used to be the executive chef at the Michelangelo Hotel here in Sandton. That's the first time I met him. Many, many years ago. He's back. He had a bit of a stint at the Mount Nelson and many other international hotels, and he's back at the Four Seasons now, serving up some incredible fare. And there's also some incredible upgrades happening at the Four Seasons and some construction that's underway. And they even got a brand new ballroom that they've built, which looks also just incredible from the outside. I'm very keen to see what the inside looks like. Then Sanlam hosted an event in Hyde Park Corner this week as well. And then also there was the Festival of Motoring, which hosted a media day to preview the past weekend's show at Kyalami. If you went to go check out some of the cars, let me know. I'd love to hear what you thought, what caught your attention. What did you think? A very, very dominant Chinese lineup in terms of car releases and a lot of walking. But if that wasn't enough walking, Comic-Con was on as well this past weekend. And if you opted for that instead of the cars, maybe you went for the characters and the cartoons, well, I'd love to hear from you as well. What did you think of Comic-Con? Anyway, what are we covering in the show this week? In a bit, I'll be bringing you two snippets from an AI summit I had the privilege of emceeing and moderating recently, looking at the impact of artificial intelligence on education, but also Africa's plans to get in on the AI game. Take a listen to that in just a bit. As always, I then catch up with our regular entertainment commentator to chat all things entertainment, and we'll take a look at content on streaming platforms this week. And finally, I chat to a former South African Survivor champion about his return to the show on a global stage. And if you're a fan, you won't want to miss this one. This and more coming up in the next hour. And I'd also like to hear from you, of course. And if you'd like to get in touch, you can send through your questions, comments, and feedback on email, editor@sandtontimes.co.za. You can connect on social media at Sandton Times or hop onto the website, www.sandtontimes.co.za. Don't forget our exclusive WhatsApp number for the Sandton Times Hour and the Sandton Times, 084 Sandton. That's 084 726 3866. And send through your voice notes and so much more. If you're not part of the podcast community, be sure to subscribe to the Sandton Times Hour, and you will always get the show as it's meant to sound in full on the podcast. So make sure you're part of that on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, AfriPods, and so many more. And be sure to like and share.
You're listening to the Sandton Times Hour.
CNBC Africa's inaugural AI Summit brought together Africa's brightest minds to explore how artificial intelligence is shaping the continent's future. The summit showcased how AI is transforming key sectors across Africa, from finance and healthcare to education and content creation, highlighting both opportunities and ethical challenges. The event emphasized collaboration across government, industry, and academia, illustrating that Africa's AI potential can only be unlocked through shared vision, leadership, and strategic action. I had the pleasure of emceeing the event, moderating 2 panel discussions, the first which focused on education. As African universities face increasing pressure to scale, access, improve outcomes, and align curricula with a rapidly evolving job market, artificial intelligence offers both challenge and opportunity. I put this to Professor AJ Smit, one of the participants in this panel.
I think, as far as the future of universities is concerned, I'm not, often you would hear doomsayers say that many of our jobs are going to be replaced. I think in academia we're very safe. I think that the role of academia is to train the people, say PhD level students, who are able to ask AI PhD level questions in order to get PhD level answers out of it. That's what we need to continue doing. Often you would read that AI is already performing at the level of a sort of advanced PhD student or a medical doctor or the top lawyer. But it does require that you ask the right questions. You're not going to get a 13-year-old person asking a question of AI and getting a PhD level answer back. It requires that you know the questions that you need to ask. You need to understand where the gaps are, where the opportunities are, where your curiosity sits. And it's our curiosity that needs to be aligned with what's happening in the world. It's not AI. AI's curiosity is not aligned with what's happening in the world out there. That is going to be a sole human character going forward. We need to reconsider what it means for us to be human. Humans have always had a relationship with knowledge. That's the reason why humans have become so numerous. But knowledge isn't something that you can go off and walk in the field and pick them and put them in a basket. It's something that thoughtful, creative people generate. That is going to be the role of academia going forward, and that is where we would never want to take our eyes off the ball, is to ensure that we have graduates who are able to engage with AI in a way that we're going to get the best value for our level of inquiry out of the system.
So the more things change, the more they stay the same. It's not about getting better answers, it's about asking better questions.
It's always about asking better questions.
Yeah. Are you concerned that at some point AI might make any sort of tertiary process obsolete? Could it get to a point where at some point, even if you have an accredited degree, it might not carry as much weight as any other sort of qualification that might come along that might be AI powered?
Yeah, look, I mean, in many aspects of academia that I do hope would go extinct overnight, like administration, for instance, the bureaucrats. I think there's a very good role for AI in those kinds of systems, that would keep the system running optimally and in a manner that serves academia. I think as far as our graduates are concerned, I don't think it's going to make, at least in my field, the type of students that we want to train. There's always going to be people who want to be biologists. There's not going to be computers walking around the field asking interesting questions about some observation around a turtle, for instance. Only humans can do that. Biology is by nature something that's human. It's about humans. It's about humans' place in the world. Only people are able to ask those questions. And what I think we need to continue doing is to rejuvenate what it means to be a person who keeps their eyes on the world. AI is not going to be able to replace that, and as long as those are the careers that we value going forward, then there will always be an opportunity for people to be around.
Are you already seeing any shifts in the way students are approaching their tertiary qualifications? I know earlier on, Fifi mentioned she had someone in her family who was wanting to do accounting, and she said, oh no, don't do accounting, that's going to be out of business in a couple of years' time. I mean, are you really seeing students coming to universities saying, I'm not interested in any of these subjects, and you're suddenly having an onslaught of people studying whatever it is. I mean, I was reading the other day, bartenders are never going to go out of fashion. I see I saw that the other day. There's a thing in Hong Kong at the airport. They've got a robot that makes cocktails for you. So that's already outdated. Is there a shift in the way subjects are being chosen now?
I see a shift in students' interest. I think students have become a lot more interested in data as the currency that drives the world today. And there's been a big growing interest even in biological sciences where, my role is to teach statistics, data analysis, data science, those kinds of things. And the number of students who come to biology to learn that as a skill, as an exit level skill, they have increased. But I don't think it has changed much. It's too soon to say that, to make a judgment on whether people's interest in terms of what they want to study coming to university has changed. I don't think that has happened yet. I don't have any evidence or data to suggest that. What I can say is that it's definitely approached, or it's given those students who are currently sitting in our modules, it's given them a voice. Often people come to university and they are not fluent in English. But because of the magic that AI works on language, you can see students' ideas clearly coming out in essays. I have seen so many more impactful essays this year. Obviously, it's been worked through AI systems, but it's their voice. You can see it's their voice because it talks to the individual person in a way that they would communicate with you. So it has given people an outlet to say things that previously were entirely misunderstood. I think that's been one of the amazing things of AI today.
That was Professor AJ Smit, the sound clip courtesy of CNBC Africa. And if you'd like to see the full-length discussion, hop onto the CNBC Africa YouTube channel and search for the AI Summit, and you can get that discussion and so many more on there. A quick break and more discussions around artificial intelligence right after the break.
You're listening to the Sandton Times Hour.
For the break, I played you a short excerpt from the CNBC Africa inaugural AI Summit hosted in Sandton only a few weeks ago, where the event highlighted real-world case studies demonstrating how African businesses, institutions, and startups are harnessing AI to drive measurable impact and foster inclusive growth. But what about our own African AI? Well, I sat down with Professor Arthur G.O. Mutambara and Naeem Seedat to get a better understanding of how this could and should work.
We need to understand that under the AI revolution, scale is very important. Numbers make a difference. We must work as the continent of Africa with a collective GDP of $3.4 trillion, a population of 1.4 billion people. Those are the numbers that will make sense to rush to China, to America, that will give us the scale that we need to pull our resources together and be able to play in this game. So, yes to national plans, but more importantly, let's have a regional AI strategy. Let us have a continental AI strategy where we leverage our numbers as a continent. Because, when we talk about AI, the energy required to do those LLMs, there's not a single African country that can do it on their own, unless we do Inga Dam, for example. A collective AI project can work if we have energy of the level that we can get from Inga Dam. Because these infrastructure aspects are very energy hungry. So energy, you need a lot of energy, which we can get from scale. Money, we can get a lot of money if we collectivize. And then talent, to do an LLM. Some of these companies have 100 PhDs in one company working on those LLMs. So if we're going to be playing in the space of infrastructure, we must, yes, have our national plans, but think more about how do we work as SADC, ECOWAS, as East African Community, how do we work together as the African continent. Now, when you say Nigeria and South Africa are in the super, they're not. In terms of thought leadership on AI, Rwanda and Kenya are ahead of South Africa. I've done this study. So yes, the economy is big here in South Africa. Yes, the economy is big in Nigeria, but in terms of ideas and thinking through what's required for the AI revolution, Rwanda has done a better job. Kenya is way ahead of South Africa. So we must be very careful that we learn from the smaller countries. Learn from Singapore, learn from Malaysia, learn from UAE. We must leverage global best practices from across Africa and also from the global south. So going forward, I want to emphasize the need to work together as a continent of 1.4 billion people with a collective GDP of $3.4 trillion. Then we can have the amount of energy we need, the amount of money we want, and also the talent that is required to play in the role in the space of the hardware for AI.
All right, so Rwanda or Kenai might be a thing going forward in terms of AI. But are the frameworks and the regulations aligned enough to make this happen fast enough? Because speed is a situation right now. And we've been debating inter-Africa trade, inter-Africa travel, I mean, goodness, for the last 10 or 20 years. And I think we still haven't made as much progress as I think a lot of people would like. So if we can't trade across borders, if we can't travel across borders, how are we going to get all these governments to talk to each other?
Let's start
with
the framework. What we need in every country in Africa is a national AI vision. Having gotten the vision, we have a national AI strategy, which is the game plan that says from where we are, how to get to the vision. But more importantly, number 3, we need what we call a national AI implementation matrix. National vision, national strategy, national implementation matrix in each African country. But that's not enough. At every regional level, SADC, ECOWAS, East African Community, Maghreb, we must have a regional AI vision, a regional strategy, and a regional implementation matrix. But that's not enough. We need a continental AI vision, a continental AI strategy, and then a continental AI implementation matrix. Those 3 levels, country, region, and continent, must talk to each other dynamically. That way we can then start to address the issue of how do we do AI together. You're very correct. We've talked integration for a long time. We've not done it. But we must understand that it's no longer a nice to have to work together. It's about survival. And why do we need 55 presidents in this little continent of ours? We have 55 people calling themselves president. China has 1.4 billion people, GDP $19 trillion, they have 1 president. India has 1.2 billion people, a GDP of about $5 trillion, they have 1 prime minister. What's wrong with you Africans? 55 of you. This is the problem. We do not care much about integration. We talk it. Because when we are united, when we have the United States of Africa, there will be 1 president, maybe coming from Gabon. Ramaphosa will be Minister of Agriculture. Is he ready? Mnangagwa will be Minister of the Police. So I'm just confirming your skepticism that these Africans are not serious about working together. They talk about it only.
Wow.
Perhaps.
What a way to kick into the afternoon.
I know,
Alex.
Yeah, and I think it's a highly emotive topic with a lot of opinions in terms of what we should be doing. And I always like to think that irrespective of whether the politicians are reorganizing themselves, at the end of the day, we need to think about every single citizen of our continent. That's really the level we're going to go to. And what we're seeing with AI is not too dissimilar to what actually we've been dealing with over the past 30 years when it came to the digital economy. The reality is, and earlier it was spoken about, we have a massive problem with inclusion. And beyond the big stuff, at the very simple basic level, which is what you're talking about, there is the electricity problem. So you can't connect to the digital economy if you don't have electricity. And with that, there are 4 other really vital elements. You can't connect to the digital economy meaningfully if you don't have facility. We take it for granted that you can access a facility where you can sit at a desk and have a light and have a chair. There are millions and millions of people who don't have facility. And then you look at other elements, such as connectivity. That's where we as a group are stepping in and saying connectivity is a thing we've got to address at scale across the continent. And then there's technology. You can't participate in the digital economy if you don't have the latest technology to make you a meaningful player in that economy. And earlier it was said by one of the speakers that the fundamental thing, I think Jeffrey said it as well when he was talking about this, is literacy. It is the elephant in the room. We have not made a meaningful dent on literacy in all its forms across the country. We still struggle with endemic levels of adult literacy. And if you're not literate, how on earth are you going to transition into the digital space? And then how on earth are you going to transition into the AI space? So, these 5 elements of electricity, technology, connectivity, literacy, that's our new big 5. Those are the barriers to entry, and we've got to be serious. And I agree with Professor, you can't solve these things alone.
Yeah.
It takes a village, and it's going to take a village to really pull up its socks and actually get going and doing something.
The voice there of Naeem Seedat, joined by Professor Arthur G.O. Mutambara at the CNBC Africa AI Summit. And thanks again to CNBC Africa for those audio clips.
You're listening to the Sandton Times Hour.
Taking the second half of the Sandton Times Hour, my name is Alexander Leipner, and if there's anything that sounded good during the show, but you didn't get all the details, well, don't despair. You can hop onto the website and visit the show notes, www.sandtontimes.co.za. Click on this week's show notes and get a detailed breakdown of everything we've discussed, some further reading, links, and so much more. Of course, also be sure to follow the Sandton Times on social media at Sandton Times and use the WhatsApp line exclusive to the Sandton Times 084 Sandton. That's 084 726 3866, and send through your voice notes, text messages, and so much more. And that's the exclusive Sandton Times WhatsApp line. As we do every single week around about this time, we connect with Tat Wolfen, our regular entertainment commentator. And Tat, I know we've been chatting about this for some time. We've wanted to do a show on classic rock documentaries and rock movies.
Yeah, and if you have your pen and paper handy, you might want to make some, because I really regard,
just get my paper ready.
I really regard to be like the iconic rock movies. So firstly, there's The Song Remains the Same, which was largely a Led Zeppelin concert, but with some little documentary inserts along the way. Then there's The Last Waltz, which was directed by Martin Scorsese. And that was the swan song of Bob Dylan's backing band, The Band, and it featured a whole galaxy of guest performers. So that's also one to watch for. Woodstock, of course, it was more than a rock concert. It was a cultural milestone, wasn't it? Because,
yes.
It happened in 1969, and it was kind of the swan song of the 60s, the era of peace, love, and trucks. And then came The Phantom of the Paradise, an amazing rock opera by Paul Williams, which I think is one of the underrated musical/rock operas of our time. Speaking of rock operas, there's Tommy, which was by The Who, and The Who also appeared in the movie, and the movie was directed by the great Ken Russell, the British director, who made these kind of outrageous but very entertaining movies. And then, of course, you don't want to leave the Beatles out. I'm not the hugest fan of the Beatles, but I can't deny that they were enormous. They made a handful of movies, but my favorite of all of them would be The Yellow Submarine, which was a psychedelic animated movie. And we can't leave out, if we're talking about British bands, I've spoken about The Who, I've spoken about the Beatles. How about the Rolling Stones?
Sure.
They've made a few movies, but 1969, which was the same year of Woodstock, they brought out a movie called Gimme Shelter, which was a documentary, a rock documentary about the concert at the Altamont Speedway just outside San Francisco. But the documentary ended up being a bit darker than the filmmakers had expected, because the Rolling Stones had hired the Hells Angels to be their security. And at some point, someone lunged towards the Stones on stage to attack them. And one of the members of their security, who were Hells Angels, stabbed the person to death. So it's not really what most of us would want to experience at a music festival.
No.
Then there's The Rose, which was loosely suggested by the story of the great Janis Joplin, and it starred Bette Midler. Some great songs in there, a lovely movie. Then I have to include Bowie. You can't talk about rock movies and not include at least one Bowie movie, and he's made a few movies, obviously. But this was Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, which was a 1973 concert that he did at the Hammersmith Odeon in London. So I hope everyone's been scribbling notes down madly because I really think these are iconic rock movies that one ought to see before one shuffles off the mortal coil. But now here comes the bad news.
Okay.
Do you know that not one of these movies is available on any of our 4 streaming platforms? And I remember the futurists telling us that, oh, by 2010, there'd be this one great big cloud. And if your wife says to you, you know what, I'd love to see Casablanca again, you just go on and there it is. Or if one of your kids says, "Oh, please, can we see Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure? I've heard that it's funny, from your generation, whatever." It would be, and that was what we were being told, is that all movies would be available in one place. But what's happening now is that we have a whole bunch of streaming platforms. If you want a wider choice, you have to subscribe to all of them.
Yeah.
So then you're paying 1,000 odd rand a month, and even then, it's not like all movies that you can think of that you'd like to see. So I don't know if these are ever going to converge at some point, but at the moment for me streaming it's kind of a compromise, and I would like to think that not everybody has thrown out their DVD players and Blu-ray players. I certainly haven't. We have 2 excellent video hire outlets in Joburg. There's the Majestic in Greenside, and there's Video Spot in Craig Hall. And I bow down to them. Not only do they have a whole back catalogue of classic movies going decades and decades back, but they still have the latest releases available for you to hire. So, and they get them before the streaming channels get them, if the streaming channels are going to get them at all. So you've got this incredible choice.
Tat, so circling back to the streaming platforms, is this a matter of licensing? Is this a matter of rights? Is it an issue with the music copyright that some of them can't show these documentaries or these movies because of the music? How do we get to this point? Because I believe in the United States, it's even worse. I mean, we've got 4 streaming platforms. They've got, I don't know, probably half a dozen, if not more.
They do. And you see, because we're a smaller market, we've got the advantage. So Showmax, for example, because of its context with DSTV, Showmax has access to the HBO, to the Peacock, which is NBC, Paramount, whatever. So Showmax has access to a whole lot of studios, but it's one outlet, Showmax, one platform. Whereas in the States, you're going to have to subscribe to the Peacock thing, to HBO Warner's, you know what I mean? So it does vary from market to market. And in the States, you have to sign up for about 6 or 7 different streaming platforms. And again, you don't have everything. There are a few cases where there are, music right issues or whatever. So that's why they can't put, let's say, Woodstock on their streaming platform. That's a minority of cases, because if Woodstock could come out on DVD, if Warner's could bring it out in a DVD, then they can also stream it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Because it's not just these particular movies. I mean, I've also found myself looking for a movie, maybe it's something a little bit older or something that's dated a little bit further back, and then you start going through all these platforms and typing in the names. And Netflix has even got a function where if you type in, for example, Gladiator, and they don't have Gladiator, they will bring you a whole bunch of other movies or series that fall into that, maybe it's something about Rome, maybe it's something about gladiators, maybe it's a documentary, etc. But it's obviously not the Russell Crowe Gladiator, Ridley Scott sort of edition. And then you sort of log out of there, and then you log into another platform and see if you can find it there. So it seems to be something that kind of goes across genres and goes across different content. And also I found that there's also a lot of things that were released on DVD or that were released even on CD. And I mean, now we're going into the music streaming, which is not really where we want to focus. But you find that there's certain songs or certain movies that aren't available at all anywhere, but you actually have them on a CD or on a cassette at home. And you're like, wow, they've never decided to digitize this or actually put it onto any of these platforms.
Absolutely. And but now where you're saying, where you're talking about having to hop from one platform to the other to find out if that movie is available, there is a very handy website which you can sign up for free, and it's called Just Watch, and it's available around the world. Okay.
Yeah.
And you tell it firstly which country you're in. So you sign up, you become a member. You say I'm in South Africa, and then you can also tell it which streaming platforms you have at home, for example. And then if you're looking for, I don't know, The Sound of Music, then it'll say to you, this movie is not available in your area, or this is available on Disney Plus, which I think it is. Okay.
Oh, brilliant!
It's very handy. But I speak of Disney Plus. This is one problem, and I have been in touch with Disney Plus. They haven't signed up in South Africa for Just Watch. I think if you live in the States, it tells you if a movie is available on Disney Plus. So that's the only hole at the moment for South Africans using Just Watch. But if you put in any other movie or TV series, it'll tell you where in South Africa you can watch it, or if it's not available to watch.
But Tat, listen, I think that has been some very good insights, and that Just Watch website, we'll also put that up on the Sandton Times website, a guide to help you find where to find what and where to locate it on the different platforms that we now have. These are 2025 problems. But Tat Wolfen, thank you once again for your insights, and we're going to catch up again next week and do it all again.
Well, at least I know where I can find you, right? On the Sandton Times Hour. Cheers.
You're listening to the Sandton Times Hour.
So Survivor fans had a fantastic weekend as 14 survivors, 16 days, and a staggering 250,000 Australian dollars. I'm just trying to do a quick calculation there. I think that's about 1.2 trillion rand. No, it's about 2.9 million rand. Sorry, conversion was a bit off. That came up for grabs in Survivor Australia versus the world. It hits screens on Mnet on Sunday night at 5:30 p.m. and it's bringing together some of the best players from around the globe. And representing South Africa on this massive stage was none other than Rob Bentele, the man who outwitted, outplayed and outlasted his way to victory on Survivor South Africa Islands of Secrets. And this time Rob is back in Samoa joining the World Tribe alongside international Survivor legends. Now Rob also made history as the very first South African castaway to compete on an international version of Survivor, facing off against some of Australia's fiercest players. It promises to be one of the toughest Survivor seasons yet, and Rob joins me to chat about his return to the island, what it's like going up against Survivor royalty, and so much more. And Rob, it's good to have you back on the Sandton Times Hour.
Thanks for having me, Alex. It's been a while, my brother.
Rob, it has been a while. I think we last spoke when you won the South African version, and now back on our screens in an international version. And congratulations on doing so and competing internationally. How did this even come about?
Look, to be honest with you, I knew this was always going to happen. It was just a matter of time because the fans have been wanting it for years. They've been wanting this crossover. So I knew when the time does come, I should get a call. So when the call did come, the first thing I said was, what took you guys so long? And there was no hesitation. Immediately, just, pack the bags, go. Let's make this thing happen.
And I must say, I'm glad the Australians are spearheading this because they have done a phenomenal job with interpreting this particular show and executing it. I mean, the production values, the execution is unmatched.
No, I was also, for me, to be honest with you, other than Survivor South Africa, I only watch Survivor Australia. Survivor Australia is so brute. It's the challenges are the toughest. And the production quality is second to none. You know, they are amazing.
I mean, you walked away, I think, almost with one hand tied behind your back on the South African version. What was it like stepping into the game against a global team of very serious and very competitive Survivor players?
Yeah, look, for me, I was just firstly, honestly grateful and honored just to be invited to actually play with the best players on earth. You know, they had obviously 7 Australians they had to choose, and they only had 7 people to pick around the world. So to be chosen as one of those 7 was honestly an honor. And when I got on the island, I knew the Australians far better than I knew the rest of my tribe. So a lot of people were fangirling about this one and that one, this American, that. I truly didn't give 2 hoots about these people. They were just normal people to me. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
So it's probably a good thing because, like, sometimes I think when you walk into these situations and you really know too much about everybody else, like you say, you can maybe sometimes be a bit starstruck or maybe make the wrong decisions. But what was it like being in the dynamics that is the World Tribe? Because I mean, you've got somebody from Quebec, I think it's Finland, 3 Americans, yourself, and I think that's it, is it? And New Zealand.
Yes. Yeah, look, the tribal dynamics for me were quite simple. I saw 4 people who come from very small Survivor franchises compared to the Americans. We only have 1 horse in the race for our country. So it was quite simple to say, let the 4 of us stick together and take out an American. It was a very obvious, easy, logical decision that I didn't expect to have to try and explain it or convince it to any one of them. It made sense.
Yeah, and they had the most representation, which was quite interesting, I suppose, from the politics of Survivor perspective. America is probably their biggest market. It is the the genesis of Survivor, but they could have, I think, brought in maybe a little bit of a bigger mixed bag instead of having 3 Americans occupy those seats.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's definitely a fact that the Americans are true legends of Survivor to a whole different degree that we even understand. So they will definitely bring the viewership that we need on the show. And they are amazing players. They really deserve to be there.
Well, I'm going to quickly just throw this out here that this is a bit of a spoiler alert. So if you haven't watched the first episode yet, proceed with caution, because we're going to get a little bit more in-depth with this conversation. And if you haven't seen it, I don't want to ruin it for anybody. So, maybe I come back and listen to this at a later stage once you have. But Rob, when you went into this show, did you come in with a very similar strategy that you wanted to execute on the South African one, or did you decide to take a very different approach?
So Survivor is a game where you can't really have too much of a long-term plan because the conditions are constantly changing in front of you. You have to just adapt to the game itself. The difference between this one and my previous game was that previously it was a 39-day game. There was a lot of time where you could actually work on your relationships. You could really solidify them, get those tentacles deep inside there before you start pulling strings. This game was only a 16-day game. And if there's only 14 players, you're talking someone's going home almost every single day. It's a whole different pace of Survivor. And we basically had to hit the ground running. And me not even knowing these people was kind of a disadvantage because I didn't know who's who in the zoo. I didn't know their previous relationships. The previous Survivor as well. We walked into it, no one knew anyone. This one, everyone knew everyone. So you're already getting left out on a lot of backstory information. You can even see that the fact I went to Poverty to tell her we're voting out Siri was a massive mistake. These people have been playing this game together for the last 16 years. Had I known that, we would never even thought of that,
Yeah.
So it was a bit detriment to me that I didn't know these people's histories and stuff. But you work with what you've got. And I hit the ground there running quickly. There was no holding back.
I mean, the general rule of thumb is that on the first day or the first 2 days, you don't want to stick out as too much of a leader, too much of somebody who's taking control, because that automatically puts a target on your back.
100%.
Was there that similar risk this time around, or was this very much a very different kind of game?
You see, with me, when I play Survivor, there are certain key points where the vote has to go your way. If not, then you will play the rest of that game on your back foot, and you'll most likely become a pawn to somebody else's game. So on that episode, there is a line in the sand that I draw there, because I realized that if one of these Americans take one of us out, they automatically have the power. And then for the rest of the season, I'm going to be running around scrambling I'm going to have to just lay low and do nothing. For me, if you don't play the game plays you. And that was a fight that I realized I had to win there and then. It was either that or nothing. Otherwise I'm sitting in this game to become a pawn for somebody else. I realized the poverty threat very early, and I don't think the rest of them were cognizant of it. I also realized that there are already too many women on this tribe, because it's very quickly women can just, if the numbers are too far in the majority, then they just form a woman alliance. So for the sake of balance, the logical decision was to take out an American, number one, and number two, it had to be a woman. That would keep balance in the tribe so that there's not too much power in one direction. That was my immediate assessment of this situation. But I can admit that my usual finesse of how I do speak to people, firstly, there was no time to have that nice finesse that I normally have from Survivor South Africa.
Yeah.
And I did not consult my alliance well enough because I relied on them just using their basic logic. I didn't think I needed to emphasize a point that was actually a fact. So we'll see how it plays out for them going forward, though.
Yeah. Well, look, another spoiler alert as we kind of get a little bit more into this. But you did end up walking out of that first tribal council, having to go home. And funny enough, it was the same weekend. If I'm thinking about it now, it's about a week or 2 weeks delayed from the original premiere in Australia. It was the same weekend as Drickus, the Proteas, and the Springboks also faced a defeat. So you weren't completely alone. But how did you feel like having to walk off in the first episode?
It's obviously it is heartbreaking. You do know how much more you have to give to the show. I love entertaining. For me, it's like if I'm on Survivor, it must be entertaining. I do not want a single boring episode with me around. And I knew what I still had left for the show. It would have been amazing to stay longer. But, Survivor is a game. And in all games, you win some, you lose some.
Yeah.
And I just had to, so it's part of the game. And I think I've learned both extremes of the game this time. I've won it and I've come out first, which means when I go back in, I'll be far more balanced. I'll understand the game far better.
Were you amused, surprised, humbled by the fact that so many of the internationals actually had seen the South African season of Survivor that you had played in?
Yeah, it was quite surprising. I didn't expect that. Like, I really didn't think that the Golden God was a huge fan of mine. George was a huge fan. They all knew me, especially the Australians. Not so much the World Tribe, but the Australians, each and every one of them knew exactly who I was. And I was not waiting for that. I was hoping that I'm just some random kid from Africa, that was the angle that I was hoping I could run. But no, unfortunately, already you saw in the episode, David had explained to Parvati exactly what kind of game I've played. So she already knew the threat level there. The Australians already knew it anyway. So it was no going under the radar with that one, which is why you just have to say, right, I'm not going to go out for free. I'll go out kicking and swinging, and that's what I did.
A quick look behind the scenes. How did the Australian production sort of weigh up against the South African production? Because I know you also shot this on the same island that you had been on for the South African one. So I suppose it's quite an interesting comparison.
And really, to be honest with you, in terms of the crew being organized, production quality, we on par with them. Really speaking, I saw no difference. The South Africans were just as well equipped, just as well organized. Everything was seamless, smooth. The production standards of Survivor are very high. With Australia and South Africa, I can definitely promise you that.
Well, Robert, I don't want to put you too much in a corner, but I do have to ask you. I know Jonathan, the Australian host, has been taken off the show. He's been replaced by David for the next season. Do you have any feelings on that?
Well, look, it's not a secret that David and I are very good friends, and I know him personally, and he, as we speak, it's also public knowledge, so I can say it. As we speak, he's on the island, and he's shooting a new season, and he is giving it his all. I've never heard him speak about something that he's so passionate about. He loves the game. He really loves the game. I mean, he came to come suffer out there with us after he had already won $5.8 million, which shows he's not doing it for the money. None of us were doing it there for. It was for the world title of Survivor,
Yeah.
He just truly loves the game so much that, even after winning that, he doesn't necessarily need to work. So he's doing this because he loves the show so much. And I know he's going to give it his all. I believe he'll take it to new frontiers. I do believe he'll take it to the next level.
Well, Rob, thank you so much for representing South Africa on the world stage for the show. And if you are a big Survivor fan, don't miss Survivor Australia versus the world as the show continues on Mnet. And all the details will also be up on the Sandton Times website. And Rob Bentele, congratulations on making it onto the show. And thanks for representing us. And look forward to chatting to you again, hopefully on a more South African-related Survivor occasion.
I have a feeling that should be coming up soon enough because we need to do our season 10, and it's no secret it would be an All-Stars, and it will be a banger.
Well, I'm looking forward to it.
No, me too, Alex. Great chatting to you, buddy.
And that's a wrap for the Sandton Times Hour for another week. And feel free to send through your questions and comments on one of the many channels. You can email editor@sandtontimes.co.za. You can connect on social media @Sandton Times. Visit the website, www.sandtontimes.co.za, or connect on the exclusive Sandton Times WhatsApp line 084 Sandton. That's 084-726-3866. And feel free to send through your voice notes, text messages, and so much more. As always, make sure to subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, and other leading digital audio platforms, and join the growing community online. Thank you to all my guests who made time to be on the show this week, as well as the team behind the scenes. And a very special thank you to you for listening. And God willing, we'll do it all again next week.
That's it for this week. Thanks for listening to the Sandton Times Hour. And if you enjoyed it, be sure to share it.